What's up, everybody? You're in the machine. This is 3 days to crow. Crow, Kakasana, is like the quintessential arm balance in yoga because it teaches us so many important body mechanics that we're going to use later for other arm balances. It engages the core a little bit, tests out our arm strength, and shows us the proper wrist compression that we're going to use from here on out. Today, day one, is a little test to make sure you're even ready for it and a few exercises to get you more ready, and then kind of a way to cheat in and accomplish the pose with some big modifications before we move on. The next day, we'll pick up the pace a little bit, and by day 3, you will be in a crow pose. Let's do it. Let's start out by seeing if you're even ready for crow. It might not be the pose for you yet, and that's okay, but let's find out. First, can you hold up your own body weight? Not press it, not do anything fancy, just lock out around 90 degrees at the elbows like a Chaturanga and hold it there. Here's the test. Squat down and bend your arms around 90 degrees. And then lean as much weight as you can into those arms. Kind of like a Chaturanga, but in a Chaturanga we have so much weight behind us that it's not that great of a test. Here we're actually gonna lock out the arms, just push down on the mat and bend them at 90 degrees or so, and then push some weight in to see if you can hold yourself up. If you can do this, you have the arm strength for crow. Remember, holding in place is different than doing a bunch of presses. I can't bench press very much at all, but if you just put it in my hand, I could probably hold it because that's different from compressing all the way down and having to come all the way back up. If the strength is a problem for you, we're gonna do some really easy little tricep strengthening exercises in a minute, but next, let's make sure you have the compression because you kind of have to be in a ball when you're doing crow. So can you squat down and touch your shoulders or the armpit area to the top of your thighs or your knees? That would be ideal. If you can at least squat to here and touch your elbows to your knees, that's enough. If you have a problem with that compression, we'll do an exercise for that also. So let's talk about the strength building. If your triceps are just not quite there yet, you don't need to do Chaturangas for this because that brings us forward and puts some pressure on the shoulders. All we're gonna do is these easy little Chaturangas, like we put our hands down for a push-up, hips on the mat, and all I wanna do is a few reps to make the triceps work. So I externally rotate the arms, keep the elbows pretty close to me, drop down to 90 or so, and push myself back up. These are excellent strength builders. And you can practice by adding some more weight, lifting the hips off the ground, and doing a few of those. It might take some time to build up that strength. Once you're there, remember, all you have to do is hold yourself in place. You don't actually have to do those presses. You just have to be able to freeze. As far as the compression of the hip and the knee goes, if you can squat here, if you can do Malasana, you're in business. But you don't have to do Malasana. With the heels up, can you squat down? If so, that's fine. If not, you might want to sit and practice pulling your knee toward you one at a time while you crunch. Sometimes we think, it won't quite make it, but I can move both sides of this, the knee or the thigh and the body. So from here I can do a crunch forward to make sure I'm getting one at a time. Of course, do both sides. Pull it in close, heel near the butt, crunch. Once I can do that, pull them in close, squeeze it all, crunch. The core is going to be really important here. We're going to talk about that in a minute. If you can get those two movements down, the holding of yourself up and the crunching into sort of a ball, you can physically, mechanically do crow. Let's check one more thing, which you might find interesting if you don't have crow yet. All we're going to do is lay back, bring our knees up as close as we can get them, as much of a ball as we can, with our head forward, but then looking up, so chin off the chest. From there, reach your hands behind you, scapula together, and then swing them up. If you can do this, even this low, elbows at knees, you're in a crow. This is an upside down crow. If you took a picture of this and flipped it over, this is a crow. If you can do this, you can do the crow. Another good exercise for the core, if that's no problem for you, is just to hold this from here and pull the knees towards you. Crunch once and relax. Crunch again and relax. It doesn't have to be a big range of motion to engage these transverse abs that we're going to need in crow. So hands up, peel the toes back, and crunch this way. Just a few inches of movement can start engaging that core. Now, let's put ourselves in a modified crow so we can learn the arm balance. Eventually in crow, I want to have my hands shoulder width, a bend in my elbows to make a nice shelf for my knees to set on, and I'm going to look something more or less like this. When I find this balance point, I am doing so little work that I can stay here almost as long as I want, and I'm talking without it straining at all. You can tell I'm not doing a lot of work. I've found the little middle spot there, so it's not a lot of work for me. I'm going to take you out of position to get the feel of the wrist compression. That's another thing that can be kind of rough. If you're shifting forward in your Chaturangas, you're getting that practice already because it's the fingers forward that keep us from falling over, or at least that's one of the things that keep us from falling over. So we're going to squat down, heels off the mat so we can turn these knees out, widen them as much as we can. We're going to take our elbow points and place them at the top of this crease where the calf meets the thigh. One there, one there. Now we're going to squat as low as we can, bring our chest down also, and put our hands really wide. The stability from this is going to come from pushing out on the elbows and squeezing in with the knees. Again, this is not like a very good crow, but it's a great place to start without perfect form to get you the feeling of the posture. Another nice thing about this is we're getting so low and our arms are so wide that we can really lean forward to feel the pressure on the wrists and the amount of muscular engagement that we need and the amount of core without even leaving the ground. So from a side view, I can lean down and shift forward, kind of get the feel, try to engage my arms, engage some core, and then I can practice 1 foot at a time. So from here, I'm just going to engage. I'm going to have to use my abdominal muscles and a little bit of my hip flexor and just keep my knee where it is and pull 1 foot up. Set it down, pull the other foot up. Set it down, pull the other foot up. Eventually, I pull 1 foot up. I can be really low with this and then pull the other foot up. And I'm just barely off the ground. The beautiful thing about this is that if I do overshoot it forward, I barely bonk my head down a couple inches. So this is a really modified wide crow to keep us low to the ground. It's a lot less intimidating. I learned this in a regular position with a bunch of blocks stacked up. So if I fell forward, I could catch myself with my head. That's okay if you like that approach. But if we're low enough here, you don't even need the blocks. You're only a couple inches from the mat. So let's practice this one more time. Then you're going to work on it to get ready for day 2. So squatting down, wide knees. Remember, pushing out a little with the elbows and squeezing in a little with the legs creates some stability for us. We plug the points of the elbow in at the top of that crease where the calf meets the thigh. I don't want my arms really poking out because that's just too much of a modification from the position we eventually want. I just want them really wide. So if you find yourself pushing out with your elbows, just widen your grip so your elbows are pretty much above your wrists. From here, lean forward, grip the ground. It's important that your fingers stop you from going too far forward, just like your toes would stop you from going too far forward if you were standing upright. So from here, nice and wide, nice and low, I drop my chest down and start shifting. When I'm ready, when I feel like I'm close enough to having some weight forward to equal the weight behind, I lift 1, maybe 1 at a time, alternating, then eventually 2, And I practice this. If I'm getting good at it, I can even shift around a little bit and experiment with where the weight goes. And again, from here, even if I go too far forward, I just barely touch my head. So remember, strengthen the arms. If you need those modified Chaturangas, do them until your arms get strong. They will definitely get stronger. Strength in the core with just a little bit of squeeze, which we're eventually going to use to do crane and a bunch of other poses, even handstand. And the compression. If you have a hard time getting your knees to meet your elbows, you just need to really practice pulling that leg up. You can even do it from your back. Laying flat and pulling it as I use my abs and alternating. That is day one to crow. Tomorrow we're going to make a few more adjustments, and by the third day you will be crowing or your money back.
But the whole point of the machine is to relieve you of that suffering.